Good morning.
Welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Brittany Brown.
I'm Bill Edwards. Glad to have you aboard on this Monday. Hope you had a great weekend as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving Day, and lots to be thankful for, especially if no more Democrats get elected.
And we're still counting, Bill. Isn't that weird?
Yes. And the United States of America, supposedly the most powerful country in the world and the most advanced technologically, and with all of this new equipment and supercomputers and everything, they are still counting ballots. And interestingly enough, it's Democrats that keep winning for the most part.
Yes, Bill. The counting in the middle of the night, I think, is and I think if I remember correctly, this just happened. But in Nevada, they were counting votes, and then all of a sudden, the cameras went down for about 8 hours, and then the Democrat won the election. It's really strange how that keeps happening.
It's almost like the water main breaking in Atlanta. During the last go round, and actually the water main didn't break. It was amazing that one of the polling places where the temperature had dropped to something like 35 degrees in this place, and those machines are temperature sensitive, and it turns out that somebody had turned off the gas.
There's a lot of anomalies, Bill, and I think that there's a lot of lessons that I hope Republicans are learning right now.
Yeah, we need to start rating some 18-wheelers with a bunch of ballots in them that we just happened to find, and all of them Republicans. It's just phenomenal.
Well, I don't think we should corrupt the voting system. However, there was some interesting articles that actually came out over the weekend about how the Democrats are really focused on not necessarily getting votes. That's why we're not seeing them actually try to earn voters votes, because they're not debating. They're not really campaigning that well. And I think we're seeing why, because they're not focused on actually earning votes from people the way that we have seen in the past. They're focused on collecting ballots, which is a totally different operation than, actually trying to earn votes, because voters actually, they have the intention of voting. They're going to vote on election day. They're going to vote early, but they are going to vote. And they're really focused on the people that have no desire to vote, but if they're pushed to vote, they will. So they're collecting ballots from those types of people that probably have no real interest in voting. They've not done any research. They don't understand how their life is impacted by voting. So I think that that's something to consider, especially when we're looking at this runoff for Herschel Walker.
Well, we're talking about in Arizona, where they said the people in Maricopa County decided they were going to bring their ballots in and hand them in personally, rather than mail them in, because they wanted to make sure that they got them and wanted to make sure they were counted. Well, okay, they got them in. I'm not sure that they were counted. They always have said those would be the last ones that would be counted, and it looked like Kari Lake was going to win this thing pretty much big time out in Arizona. And why the people went for it. I loved it that the astronaut that got supposedly reelected in Arizona said, "See, this proves that there isn't any corruption." Yeah, when the Democrats get elected, there's no corruption.
Well, I also think it also shows that they allowed governors to win, but they took those Senate seats, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at how people traditionally vote. They typically are not going to cross over for that Senate seat, especially when you look at a firebrand like Kari Lake and Blake Masters. They are basically the same branding.
And I'm still trying to figure out how it happened that Herschel Walker didn't get over 50% of the vote here, when the coattails from Brian Kemp should have taken him across, since he won by like 12 or 13 points.
Well, also, so that's about 200,000 votes, right?
Yeah.
So when you have Republicans winning in those seats by 200,000 votes, even if people withheld their vote for Herschel, which I'm not sure they could even do on the machines, Bill. I'm going to have to look into that. But I don't think that they would allow you to leave something blank, because you would get an error message. So I think that that's something that we should look into, because there is a difference in how many people voted for governor versus how many people voted in the Senate. So I don't know if maybe that comes from absentee voting or how that's done. But
they could switch to write-in and put something down.
Oh, okay.
Donald Duck or whatever. So
yeah,
that's one of the things that they could do as far as a write-in vote. Would like to hear from you on this. You can contact us through granewsmedia.com and give your comments as well. But you can put in a write-in vote, and a lot of people have. They put in Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck or Foghorn Leghorn, who I would vote for before I'd vote for any of the Democrats that were running. But at the same time, it does not make to me any sense that Brian Kemp would win by such a wide margin, and that Herschel Walker wouldn't have gone right in with him.
Well, and you're seeing this in every
Yeah,
state that
exactly.
had a
Sure are.
firebrand governor and a really like close, tight Senate race, or a race in which is in a swing state that is a Senate race. It's weird how they all went Democrat. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But these are things that we need to look at, and I think that if there is any questions about elections, which there has been since 2000, and it's not just Republicans, Democrats have also questioned, the validity of the election and the transparency of the election and these voting machines. So I think that there's a lot to look at, Bill, and the fact that they are not allowing this process to go forward, and they're not, allowing things to be out in the open when it comes to these machines, I think it's a big issue in our country. And we're seeing how voting has really changed since COVID, and what that has allowed people to be able to do with gathering these ballots and not just earning a vote.
This nonsense of the absentee ballots, or mailing everybody a ballot, which is what a lot of states are doing now. And the old saying goes, never let a crisis go to waste. They took advantage of this COVID situation big time by shutting us down. Donald Trump got terrible advice. Unfortunately, he took it. Not knowing, of course, at the time it was bad. You would have thought Anthony Fauci was a totally non-political, had been a research chemist and scientist for a number of years, for over 40 years. You would think that this guy would be shooting to you straight. Well, it turns out that he wasn't, and the history is proving that. The efficacy of the vaccine that they told us was like 98%. Turns out the efficacy of it not being any good was 98%, and it's only about 2% effective. And then they started telling you that you had to get all these booster shots and everything else. But closing down the economy was the worst thing that we did. As somebody pointed out over the weekend, Ron DeSantis gets all this credit for reopening Florida. Georgia really never closed. And Brian Kemp took a lot of brickbats for that in the media for not caring about Georgia, and hoping people were going to drop dead and everything else from something that was hardly, with few exceptions, was nothing more than the flu on steroids a little bit.
Yeah, I think Brian Kemp kind of flew under the radar on a lot of things, even though he was doing a lot of things that DeSantis was doing, and he was doing it first.
Yep.
I think that he actually flew under the radar on a lot of things. He may have gotten flack from Stacey Abrams, but it didn't make national media like Ron DeSantis did.
I even tried to get him on the radio with us on several occasions, and there was this long pause in there, and I kept telling these people, said, I'm sure he's doing good things behind the scenes, but he needs to be on the air and telling people what he's doing. I think that hurt him a little bit, but of course it proves out it didn't hurt him in the election, thank God, because Stacey Abrams would have been unmitigated disaster. A story below the fold in yesterday's Savannah Morning Misprint was talking about what's next for Stacey Abrams. I hope it's leaving for China. Maybe she could go over some of those negotiations with Xi Jinping and Biden. But she said she's going to continue to work to make sure things are fair for Georgians. Oh, please. Give me a break. And they had they quoted a poli-sci professor from Emory University saying that you're going to love this.
Oh, great.
Yeah, here's this. Let me just read from yesterday's misprint debates about said Kemp took the race by an even wider margin, but Georgia Southern professor Kimberly Martin says despite the losses Georgia by Democrats, it wasn't the red wave nationally that pundits had predicted. And she said one of the things that was the problem was, she said, I think it has to do with incumbency advantage. This is Andrea Gillespie, who is a poli-sci professor at Emory University. And she said, I think it has something to do with incumbency advantage, but she also said in 2018, Kemp and Abrams had not been governor, so there was a much more even match there, and it was closer. But she said the racial and gender bias. If I hear this racial and gender bias one more time, I think I'm going to toss my cookies. They keep talking about this. We keep electing black officials right and left We keep electing women right and left. We keep electing black women right and left. And we keep hearing about this gender bias and voter suppression and everything else that we keep hearing. And it is just disgusting. It isn't happening. And this is just a straw dog that they keep coming up with to make excuses for not performing well. And when they do perform well, then that's okay. That's America. But if a Republican wins somehow, and the media has the unmitigated gall to call Republicans election deniers, they ought to say that in front of every Democrat. It is just disgusting.
The thing is we are seeing some. So I think that it's really easy for us to focus on the fact that we didn't have a big red wave, a big red tsunami. However, we still had some big wins.
We did.
Nancy Pelosi is no longer going to be Speaker of the House, which I think we can all be grateful for.
Send up a flare.
Yes. And, there is some arguments in the party within who is actually going to be in that seat. I know Kevin McCarthy's up for that. They think it's his time. I don't love that bill. I don't think that it should be anyone's time. It's who can lead the best way. And I did just hear that Andy Biggs is actually putting his hat in the ring for Speaker of the House. So could be interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to see Jim Jordan in the real world, in the world that I live in, or Steve Scalise. But I'm thinking we're going to get Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah.
But please. He's got to be better than Paul Ryan, who I thought was going to be presidential material and was going to be absolutely dynamic as Speaker of the House, and he turned into be Mr. Milquetoast.
Yeah, he really didn't do us any favors, Bill.
No, he threw a lot of monkey wrenches into things.
Well, and now he's speaking out on his thoughts on this election. I'm not going to go into it because I don't think he's relevant, if I'm being honest.
No, it's because he's not relevant.
Yeah, he's not relevant. And sometimes you wonder why these people continue to pop up when the spotlight, I guess, looks good on them. Or like Mike Pence, he is coming out and speaking out against President Trump and things like that. And I just think that, this is the problem with the Republican Party. You do not see this on the Democrat side. And, as Republicans, yeah, we can argue about different things. However, we've got to figure out a way to be united. And I did want to talk about, we have some really interesting people that have made it into these House seats that no one's talking about. One of them is in District 3 in Houston. His name is Wesley Hunt, and he is a veteran. He went to West Point, and he also there's another guy, I'm trying to think of what his name is. He's in Michigan, but he also was a West Point graduate, also won his race in Michigan. So there are some really great candidates that are going into the House that are going to make a huge difference. And this stuff didn't happen overnight, and it's going to take a while for us to get a lot of these people in that will make a bigger difference. But just remember, these small wins are eventually going to get us where we want to be, but it takes time. And so I think that we really should talk about all the winning we've been doing as Republicans, even though we didn't get everything we wanted, we are working on it.
This is, more than anything else, it is incrementalism. And that's how we got here. That is how we're going to get rid of some of these people. And it is imperative that you don't give up. The media wants you to give up. They want you to have this defeatist attitude and say and throw up your hands and say, well, the system is rigged. It's never going to happen. It did not happen overnight in the other direction either. This has been almost a 100-year plan going back to President Woodrow Wilson when they started getting away from the Constitution, when they started making senatorial elections statewide rather than have the senates, the particular the legislatures of each state appointing a senator and making them part of the general election. That was a big mistake, and we're going to have, and of course we're going to have to live with it now.
Yep.
But at the same time, one of the things that we need to be focused on is just getting the job done. And we'll talk more about that when we get back.
Let me tell you guys something. Every time I go out to speak, everybody want a sound bite. I'm going to give you a sound bite really quick. I'm sick and tired of people putting this country down. They want to ask me why I'm running. Let's be real. I'm sick and tired. You look at the economy, you look at the gas prices. You can't buy a grocery now. It's time for us to wake up. It's time for me to get out and fight. Because I'm going to tell you, I love to win. I said, put me in the game, coach. I'm ready to play. If you ever seen me play, I can play. Have you ever seen me fight, I can fight. No matter how hard they come, how hard I can fight. I'm sick and tired of this. Tell your friends to get out and vote. I'm not here to be a politician. I'm here to be a warrior. Protect this country, protect our citizens, and protect our kids. No weapon formed against me shall ever prosper. Boom! That's it, baby!
Reverend Warnock's running a nasty, dishonest campaign. Perfect for Washington. The Reverend doesn't even tell my full story, my true story. As everyone knows, I had a real battle with mental health. Even wrote a book about it. And by the grace of God, I've overcome it. Warnock's a preacher who doesn't tell the truth. He doesn't even believe in redemption. I'm Herschel Walker, saved by grace, and I approve this message. Reverend Warnock.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
Happy Monday. I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
And I hope you had a great weekend. There was certainly lots to do, and there's a lot more coming up.
Yes, there is. And today, starting at 9 a.m., I know it's very short notice, but they are having a budget meeting for all the money they're going to spend here in Savannah. And
Savannah's got a budget meeting at 9 o'clock this morning?
Yeah, and it goes, I believe, until 4:30 this afternoon. So it's a long day at the Civic Center here. But, you know, yeah, it's going to be at 301 West Oglethorpe Avenue. So if you guys have time to check in, they're also going to be live streaming it on YouTube and Facebook. I think it's a good idea for us to know what they're going to do with the money.
Because we're talking about a $493 million expenditure for the coming fiscal year. They have $95 million planned for spending. Some of those big ticket items include $38 million for drainage improvements across the city of Savannah. And I thought we'd been doing that over the last 30 or 40 years
and
as well.
I will say, like, the drainage here is not good, Bill. You know it rains here. So I'm, like, curious what's been going on with this money.
well, I mean, it's been well spent for a lot of it. You should have seen it beforehand because, first of all, we're below sea level, okay? When we're on the coast. Okay. We have a low water table. Nobody has basements around here. If they do, they spend a great deal of money getting them done. So when it starts raining and it's high tide, there's not a lot of places for the water to go. So, I mean, this is just one of the, I mean, draining, we do need drainage improvements, but it's not going to solve the flooding problem if we get, a lot of rain like we have in the last couple of weeks. We still need rain, however. $7 million for sidewalk repairs, installation of traffic management. What is traffic management? Is that more cameras? I got a ticket for $100. I got a ticket for $100 for speeding the other day in the mail. Thank you for the Chatham County Police Department, and it's got a picture of my car. And I keep looking at the street. I don't know where it was. Said I was doing 39 and a 25 mile an hour zone. And I keep looking at this street that's got, turn lanes. That doesn't look like a 25 mile an hour zone to me. So I may take this one to court.
Yeah, that's interesting, Bill. You'll have to keep us up to date
on please.
What happens with that. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're actually analyzing, instead of just paying the ticket, you're analyzing, where is this at?
And then there's $2 million, which is bad enough.
Yeah.
Additional funding for the Savannah Affordable Housing Fund. Now, I love these generic terms that they come up with that cover a multitude of sins in government. What is affordable house? I'm living in a house I can afford. Now, I might like to live at the Landings, but I can't afford it. That's something that the late great Jim Rohn, one of my favorite public speakers of all time, Jim Rohn always used to say when he was coming along, his mentor he said to his mentor one time, he said, "Well, this stuff is too expensive." He said, "No, it's not too expensive. You can't afford it. I would like to have a Rolex, but I can't afford it." It's one of those things, the Timex or whatever, or the Bulova works just fine, keeps just as good a time for a couple of $1,000s less.
Well, and the affordable housing bill, like there are a lot of issues in Savannah. It's very expensive to live here, and it didn't used to be. Mm-hmm. So people that are from here, they are really struggling to afford the housing that has always been here. But the rents have increased because you have a lot of people moving in with a lot of money, and it changes the dynamic of the city. And I don't agree that we're spending money in these places because we have seen over time that this is not the answer. It doesn't improve anything.
It does not.
And usually these housing projects actually turn into
ghettos.
Yes, and they're not good places for people to live anyways. So I think that we need to look at reevaluating how we solve problems, because we create more problems than we're solving when we do things like this. So I do think there is an issue with it being affordable here, but I think that that comes from a lot of the money that's moved in here, Bill.
Well, and the next thing is that when you build these things, if you don't own it, then you don't take care of it. It's like a rental car. If I were driving around in a rental car, I really wouldn't worry about getting dinged and scratched over, or something like that in a parking lot or whatever. But when it's mine, it's an entirely different story. When it's yours, it's an entirely different story. As the late great Richard DeVos, the co-founder of the Amway Corporation, once said, he said, rent your house for a year and take a look at it, what it looks like when you get back.
Yeah.
It will be entirely different from when you left it.
So do you think that it would be an option? I'm all about solutions here, Bill. Do you think it would be an option to really help these people do a rent-to-own program with the government instead of doing the affordable housing that they continue to push that doesn't seem to really be helping these people? And I think that it also gives people a sense of pride to be able to own their own home. And when you feel like that's not a possibility for you, why would you take care of it? It's like, this isn't mine. I'm not, I don't know where I'm going to be in 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, there are better options to help people and encourage good behavior too. So
when it's everybody's responsibility, then nobody takes care of it. They say that is the whole philosophy, and that is the whole flaw of socialism. If it's not yours, you're not going to take good care of it. Another thing that was pointed out when Juan Perón took over as the president of Argentina, Argentina was producing 80% of the world's corn and exporting over half of the world's beef. And the people in the city started complaining that the farmers were making too much money. They were charging too much for their product. So Perón went to wage and price controls. And production, but when the farmers could no longer be rewarded for what they produced, production began dropping and dropping and dropping until almost today, Argentina has to import food to feed its own people. And it all started when the government on high decided that they knew how to run things better than the farmers did. And the same thing has happened over in Rhodesia, that is now Zimbabwe. You had they used to be one of the biggest producers of food in Africa. And when the communists took over there, they started killing all the farmers and started giving all the farmland to these peasants who had no idea how to run a farm, who had no idea how to plant crops or take care of them once they were planted. And now they have to import food to feed people.
Yeah, I think once the government starts to get involved, I think that we start to see a lot of problems, Bill, especially, we see it in businesses too, when they start to encourage what businesses they, give tax breaks to and things like that. It really changes the market dynamic. And that's not the way the free market's supposed to operate. The government needs to stay out of it and stay out of the way. And I think that, the free market will determine what things need to look like.
There are a lot of things you need government for, of course, but running a business isn't one of them. And look how well we did with Donald Trump and the deals that were made and how well the economy was going when he knew how to get business done, when he knew how to take care of things, even when he was a private businessman. What was the skating arena, the big skate rink in New York
the New
City
York Skate
that the
Arena.
city was was doing improvements on or trying to upgrade, and for 5 years practically nothing got done. He bought it, and in 3 months it was fixed, up and running, and ready to go because he knew what he was doing. He knew how to make deals. The people that said that he didn't have any experience in foreign affairs, and he was insulting all of our NATO allies by having the unmitigated gall to tell them they ought to be paying their fair share that they agreed to and signed a contract with when NATO was formed after World War II in the first place. What happened? They started paying something that they didn't. Maybe they might not have come up to the 2% that they promised, but they started putting more money into NATO, and that worked. And when he went into the Middle East, he told them, we're going to get this thing done. I used to, when somebody would say the Middle East peace process, I used to fall off the couch in hysterics because there wasn't no such animal. And he made it happen. They were signing peace treaties that the rest of the media said was impossible. When he moved finally, 3 presidents before him had sworn that they were going to move the American embassy, the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in Israel. And they didn't do it. Trump did it. And the media said that was going to start World War III. Did it start World War III? This is why you shouldn't be listening to the lamestream media. They don't know what they're talking about. They're left-wing loons. Most of them are communists and also Democrat, but I repeat myself. So just get the point was that we haven't had a businessman who knew how to get things done. That's what we need in the White House. We don't need these cretins that are running around telling us we need to get back into the World Health Organization and the climate change thing that President Biden has just gone over there and asked for forgiveness for this new climate conference that he just came from. It's only going to destroy the world.
We're paying reparations, Bill. Did you hear that? They want to pay reparations to other countries, evil dictators, and take our money to do it. I'm sorry. I am so sick of foreign money, our money going to foreign countries because we are in big trouble, Bill. We've been spending a lot of money and we continue to borrow money to send it to other countries. Those other countries need to borrow their own money and they need to take care of their own problems. Exactly. We cannot be the problem solver for everyone. We need to solve our own problems here at home before we're giving money away. And we have not learned that lesson. I think it's going to be a hard lesson, but I think it's coming, Bill.
And it's money that we do not have. That's the worst part. It would be like, if you took out a loan to give to your next door neighbor to get their garden fixed or something along those lines. And you're
putting it on credit.
And you're putting it on credit and your plumbing needs fixing.
Doesn't make any sense, Bill. Does not make any sense.
But this government doesn't. And for whatever reason, they don't understand that. And these people who think that everything is supposed to be free keep putting these people back in office. As we just saw you think, Brittany, this is a great case in point. I know a young lady who is in her early 20s, close member of the family.
Okay.
Friday night, we're talking about the election. She was so clueless about politics. I was amazed. I was totally amazed because I said, and these people are.
Did she vote?
She's These are Gen Xers or whatever.
Gen Z.
Gen Zs, yeah, Gen Zs, or maybe do we have to go to double letters now? Maybe Gen Double A.
I don't know who's next.
that might be voting, but they have no clue. They said, I mean, he even asked one question of, well, every state has one senator, right? We were trying to explain the difference between a congressman and a senator. And he said, and every state has a senator. I said, yeah, every state has 2 senators. Oh. And it's not that she's stupid, it is ignorance because she may have never had a civics lesson.
Well, I think it's really easy too, Bill, like especially when you turn 18, you're able to vote and you don't know. Like you have no idea what you're voting for. You don't know, you haven't had any real world experience to help you like, okay, why do I care about this? And I think that we need to instill those values into people. Like you always say, we need to bring civics back. And we will talk more about that right after this break.
Coming up.
First of all, what I can do to make things better is bring people together. I love this country. I believe in peace through strength. If we have no strength, we're going to have no peace. I believe in backing the blue. I believe in the Constitution. I believe that everybody should have a chance to have their faith. Do we have problems? Yes. Can we solve them? Yes. Georgia is my family. The United States is my family. So I'm going to fight and take care of them. I'm Herschel Walker, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard this morning here on this Monday. Here we are 2 weeks from Thanksgiving, or is it a week from Thursday? Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
A week from Thursday.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little earlier than normal, isn't it, Bill?
Nope, it pretty much falls on the same Thursday every year.
Man, I can't
I mean,
believe
the
that.
date changes.
Yes. Both my parents are
sometime-
actually born the 27th and 28th of November. So every 7 years, their birthdays fall on Thanksgiving.
And it looks like it's earlier if the 1st of November falls on a Thursday.
Yes.
So
that's
then
true.
it looks like Thanksgiving is a lot earlier. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago that Hanukkah and Thanksgiving fell at the same time.
Wow.
And they said that's not going to happen again for like 35,000 years. So we've got a little more time to plan this time.
Yes, that's good.
Nevertheless, but usually Hanukkah falls right around the same time as Christmas does. But this about 5 years ago, it was like Thanksgiving, and like, this is really strange. So, but to our Jewish friends. By the way, we were talking about earlier. We were talking about city planning and this budget meeting that they're having today. They said when it comes to city employees, they're going to get a 2.5% cost of living raise. I wish I were getting a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, and a salary for 72 new positions that they've added. They say to improve services. I'd like to know what those are, so we'd like to find that out. Now, here's one thing I do appreciate. A little over $4 million for pay raises for firefighters and police officers.
That's something I can definitely get on board with.
Go along with that.
The other ones I need definitions for. I would like to know exactly where that money is going, because I think that they are vague on purpose sometimes. So,
Sure.
Like
affordable housing.
Yes, yes. I hate that bill. But like I said, I think there are other solutions for that. I did hear that Bryan County is getting a new factory. Did you hear about this?
Another one?
Yes. So Norma Precision is a Italian ammunition company, and they are coming into Bryan County. It's a $60 million investment.
Cool.
Which is awesome. I like it better than the cars that we're building out there. So.
So we've got a factory building coal burners.
Yeah.
With the new Hyundai plant.
Yeah.
But this one I'm on board with.
Yes, I'm very excited about the ammunition going out there, and they'll also be able to export ammo from here, which I think is also a good thing. It's definitely a revenue generator for Georgians.
We do make it. There is a manufacturer here that makes small arms fire, and they make a very, very good anti-personnel type. And it's a kind of an innovative bullet or projectile that is extremely effective. You've heard about the hollow points that shatter upon impact. And because you want, if you were attacked, for the most part, I've always told my wife, if you get attacked, I want you to have a weapon with you that if God forbid you have to shoot the guy, it's usually a guy. If you have to shoot the guy, we want him DRT, dead right there. And this is one of those that they've actually made. It's kind of a polymer type, rather than lead. They use a polymer that shatters on impact. And it's extremely accurate. It's grooved in such a way that it spins as it goes out of the barrel, and so one of those is manufactured here as well.
What do you know the company's name on that?
I don't right offhand, no, but I'm glad you embarrassed me by asking that.
Yeah, no problem, Bill. Well, I was curious because I'm like, what is the name of this? I might have to
I'll
get my
find
hands
out.
on
I'll do some research, and I bet somebody out there knows, so you let us know. Just email us, grenewsmedia.com.
Yes, and Bill, there's been a lot of shenanigans happening over this little
Shenanigans.
election. Yes, that's
I
one of my
love
favorite
shenanigans.
words. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Have you heard of the Sam Bankman-Fried? Have you heard of him? He was the CEO of the crypto company FTX.
Oh, him.
Yes. And what's interesting is he is very connected. He's very, very young, and it was the fastest growing cryptocurrency in the world. And
Didn't they say spin it all?
it's weird. It was funneled through like Ukraine and the World Economic Forum, and he was the second largest donor to President Biden in 2020 for his campaign. And he was one of the biggest donors in 2022 to these elections. So the fact that money was filtered through Ukraine back to the U.S. into Democrats' races, I feel like that is a conflict of interest, and I don't think that those things should be happening in our country.
No, they shouldn't be happening in any country, but especially in ours, where we supposedly are worried about the whether or not our elections are fraudulent to begin with. And for the most part, I think they're still, you can still trust them, but there's a lot of things we need to look into, and there's a lot of things that need to be reset for this next election that's coming up. And tomorrow, there's an op-ed today, or an opinion piece today, and submitted by Adam Van Bremer in the Savannah Morning Misprint, about Donald Trump coming to Raphael Warnock's rescue, because theoretically tomorrow Donald Trump is going to be announcing his bid for re-election in 2024. Now, as much as I am in favor of him running again for president, Brittany, this is a mistake that he's making on a monumental scale. We need to get, because of all the shenanigans going on elsewhere that you were mentioning, we need to get Herschel Walker across the finish line. And Donald Trump's big announcement tomorrow ought to be, I'm coming out in favor of Herschel Walker, and we're teaming up with every Republican to get Herschel Walker elected, because it looks like Georgia once again is going to be the linchpin to whether or not we take the majority back in the Senate. It doesn't look like that they've told Adam Laxalt that he wasn't elected in Nevada. I don't believe that. And it looks like the space cadet was reelected in Arizona. And maybe people aren't paying any attention. But if you keep electing somebody, and I just get disgusted with Raphael Warnock's ads, who sit there and tells us about how much he cares about Georgia. And he's from here. And unfortunately, he's from here, right here in Savannah. He said that he cares about Georgia and he cares about what Georgia needs. Then why is he voting with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden 96% of the time? That's not Georgia values. The only thing I agree with him on is keeping open the Combat Readiness Training Center here that trains just about every fighter pilot in America and most of Europe and our NATO allies.
Yeah, Bill, the thought of Raphael Warnock continuing to represent Georgia, it makes me sick, because I think that he has put on a good show for everyone. But if you look at his voting record, it is so radical, and 96% of the time with Biden, like you said, that is not what Georgians believe in. And I think that they have been sold a lie, once again, of voting against their own best interests. And, they do have a system here, Bill, of collecting ballots and not votes. And I think that that's something that Republicans are going to have to get on board with if we want to win this race. And some important dates to note for this runoff are, the runoff election is December 6th. Early voting begins November 28th, and early voting ends December 2nd. And you can request an absentee ballot now through November 28th. So keep that in mind. Absentee ballot is actually a really great way to go because it avoids the QR code. So I highly recommend trying to get in there, vote, and get people to vote. If you are leaving for an early vacation for, the holidays, make sure you get your absentee in. Vote, vote, vote.
Vote early and often, as they say on the left side.
I don't know if I can get on board with often, but vote early and get your friends to vote.
This is the most important thing you do as a citizen. We talked about this till we're blue in the face. that you have to get involved. When people say, well, I don't care that much about politics. Politics cares about you. And they are going to, and these are people that run your lives. I was always amused with Jesse Waters doing man on the street interviews with these people in New York City and asking them why they voted for somebody. And either they didn't vote, they didn't know what the situation was, they didn't know who was running, they didn't know, I mean, the things that they didn't know, or said that they just weren't that concerned about politics, so they really didn't vote, and asked who won the election, and they didn't know that either. And you keep saying that, because we're involved, we think everybody knows this stuff. It is just unbelievable how badly people just seem to be just so complacent about politics. And it shouldn't dominate your life, but these are people who run your life. They are the ones who make the laws. They're the ones who make the rules, and they somehow word it so that they don't have to comply with them. I remember it going back, apropos nothing, I suppose, Brittany, but when the seatbelt laws first came along, and they said you had to, they started telling car manufacturers you have to put seatbelts in the cars, and somebody, and this is the early 70s, went around and started taking pictures of automobiles that were owned by Congress people, and they had defeated the seat, that they had buckled the seatbelt behind them or something so that they wouldn't have to put it on. And that was like at 72% of the people who voted for this bill to make sure that you had seatbelts in the cars, and they had defeated their own seatbelt regulations.
What's funny is that my dad says it all started with seatbelts, like your choice to wear a seatbelt or not, and I think it's interesting that people don't understand the linkage between the laws that are created and how it impacts your life. Like, that linkage should be fairly clear. And I think that the lack of education that we see in this country is part of the downfall as well, because people don't understand. They see a happy dance on TikTok from, Lori Lightfoot, and they're like, oh, look how cute she is. Like, oh, she's dancing. We should have her as our, mayor. I mean, that's how simplistic people are now, Bill, and they are just looking at TikTok to tell them who to vote for. And the Biden administration, they had all these TikTok influencers coming in, and that's why we saw a huge Gen Z population come in and vote, plus 26 for Democrats. And Republicans we got to figure it out. We are not doing well with these younger generations, and it's always been a problem for us. Once people start having kids and having babies, that's when they become more conservative, because they understand the impact. They understand paying taxes. They understand what that does to their family and what they're able to do with their children. They also understand how public school impacts their child's ability to learn and what they're learning. So it's not until they hit about their 30s when they start having families, especially in the millennial generation, which is now the biggest voter bloc out there. They delayed having children, so they're having children in their 30s. And now we're seeing a more conservative, I believe it's a 2% difference. So we still have 2% to make up for that to be even, but we are seeing the millennials become more conservative if they have children. Single women that have decided not to have children and are on the liberal end of things, they are going to continue to vote very liberal and very left-leaning, because guess what? When you are missing something that is natural, which is having a family bill, that's when you see the government step in, and they are making these women, they're giving them concessions for being single women. You've asked the government to step in and be that for these women who have chosen not to have a family or to have a spouse.
And who owns TikTok?
I think it's China.
Yeah, it is. And if you remember, China even said when Bill Clinton was running for re-election, we like your president. We want to see him re-elected. Well, they liked the president because he was so buddy-buddy with them. Sold them all these supercomputers that they were going to use for weather forecasting. Yeah. It's amazing how much more accurate their missiles started getting once these supercomputers were sold to them. Because once upon a time, if you bought a Chinese missile, because if you remember during the Gulf War, they had the Scud missile that was built by China. When they fired that thing, the safest place to be was the target.
That's not good, Bill. And I think we see that in the quality of a lot of the manufacturing in China. So I think it speaks for itself, and we have more to talk about right after this break.
Sure do.
Wasteful Washington spending is killing us with inflation and sky-high prices on groceries and gas. Senator Raphael Warnock voted to allow hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID relief funds to be squandered on a luxury resort in Florida, a New Jersey soccer stadium, a ski area in Iowa. Tell Senator Warnock to start voting against reckless spending to stop inflation. Georgia families need cheaper gas and food, not frivolous luxuries in other states.
There's 159 counties in the state of Georgia. And since I got into this race, I've been visiting almost every one of them just to hear from the people. They know I'm a winner. They know that I work. Well, the way I'm different is I'm not a politician, never have been. I'm a country boy that grew up in Georgia. I understand Georgia, and I'm gonna fight for Georgia. We gotta get this country back together. We gotta support our police, we gotta support our military. Most of all, we gotta support our citizens. But what I am gonna do is listen to the people. I'm gonna get out here and I'm gonna work for you. And I say what I'm gonna do and I do what I'm gonna say. And we're gonna make things happen.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard. Did you say the Pooler lit their Christmas tree over the weekend?
They did, Bill.
We're still a week and a half away from Thanksgiving, okay? I saw a meme of them. My wife pointed this out to me. Showed me a meme of had a turkey sitting on top of Santa Claus and it said, "Wait your turn, fat boy."
Exactly. We got to eat Thanksgiving dinner first.
Let's start celebrating the seasons that we have. First of all, you have Labor Day. Then you don't have Christmas,
no.
Which is what we're seeing in most of the stores. You have Labor Day, then you have Halloween, and then you have Thanksgiving. We used to have at the mall. They used to be back when people went to malls.
Yeah.
You had Santa on the day after on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Yep. That's when the Christmas decorations went up.
Yep.
Santa was lying in his bed, and the kids would all gather around, yell, "Wake up, Santa!" And that's when Christmas started.
Well, that's the thing, Bill. I think that's a big problem. It's that tradition piece that we're missing as Americans.
Exactly.
We're skipping over, and we've lost the meaning of what Thanksgiving is. It's about being thankful.
And for businesses, knock it off with this Christmas in July sales, okay? Have a 4th of July sale all you want to.
Yes.
Celebrate America. But Christmas in July, oh, please, knock it off.
Yes, I think we're more focused on consuming, Bill. Even during Christmas, I think that's what it's come down to, and I don't think kids are being taught the meaning of Christmas or why it's so special. And it is a very special time of year. I love actually being out in. I will say I'm from the colder climate, so I do miss the snow only on Christmas. I don't miss it any other time, but it's beautiful and it's a magical time of year, and I don't think people take time to appreciate Christmas, let alone the everyday things that we should be grateful for.
And one of the things we talk about the consumer, the kids that want everything when they see this.
Yeah.
In many cases, they don't. One of the things that used to be so touching to me was Johnny Carson, who was a better talk show host dead than anybody alive now. Used to the New York City post office used to send him letters to Santa that came in. And he would read these on the air, and they would bring tears to your eyes. And millions of people across the country asked for the copies of these letters so they could get the presents that these kids wanted. Usually, it was written by a sibling of something, and who said, "My little brother needs a coat." They never asked anything for themselves. "My little brother needs a new pair of shoes. My little brother needs socks." We saw some of the things that came into our church that were from countries overseas. And one little girl said she was hoping she'd get a hairbrush for Christmas. That's it. And we're the land of plenty, and I think that's wonderful. And we like to give as much to our kids as possible, but remember the real things, and remember what the season is really all about. And that, and if you think about it, you feel better about what you give than what you receive. And, the old saying, old saw goes back to better to give than to receive. And I can remember some of the gifts that I have given over the years that were given in a sense of love, and they weren't that expensive. One of the best presents I ever got from my wife was a 1930s style radio. Back once upon a time, there was no such thing as transistors and printed circuit boards. These things were pieces of furniture. They had big, huge vacuum tubes in them. When you turned a radio on, you had to wait for about 30 seconds or so while the tubes warmed up before you got the signal. And these things were beautiful, beautiful pieces of furniture. And she got this thing. She had one of her, she does property management, so she had these people that do carpentry work and everything, refinish this old radio that sits in our den now that looks like just a beautiful piece of furniture. We actually plugged it in and turned it on. I don't want to do it anymore, but the thing still worked, and the only station it picked up was mine. So, which I thought was kind of cool.
That is cool.
But it was a gift that was made. It didn't cost her anything, as far as money goes, other than paying the carpenter or whatever to do the refinishing. Mm-hmm. But a gift of love that meant so much more than if she had bought me that Rolex that I might want or something, or the Mustang that I've been wanting for a while.
Well, that thoughtfulness and that like something sentimental, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that I read something that if you're like doing service work, if you serve your community and things like that, it really helps with depression. Mm-hmm. Because when you're serving other people, you're not obsessing about why your life isn't going the way that it's not going. And I think when you see that you can give something to someone that maybe doesn't have as much as you, I think that there's a sense of appreciation that you can have, which, that's why I think it is important during Thanksgiving and during Christmas that you take your children to do some type of service work. I think that they need to appreciate the fact that they have a lot, and there are a lot of people still in this country that don't have that much.
One of the most fun things that we've done at Navy League, and we invite any of you who'd like to join us at Navy League. In fact, we're having our November meeting tomorrow night. And it's at the Carrie Hilliard's banquet hall, and anybody can be a member of Navy League. You do not have to have been prior service. You don't have to be a member of the Navy. I'm Army, and I've been a proud member of the Navy League for almost 20 years now. We just help the maritime services, which is the Coast Guard, the Marines, the Navy, and the Merchant Marines, the forgotten service. If it weren't for the Merchant Marines, we wouldn't have anything. We'd just be sitting in a field someplace. But what we do on Thanksgiving is we do 2 buffet dinners, one at Hunter Army Airfield and one at the Coast Guard station at Tybee. But for the service members who are here, who are stationed here and who can't get Christmas, everybody can't go home. So somebody has to be on duty just in case the big one goes down. We have to have somebody working. And so these military people, they don't get to go home for Christmas in many cases. So we or get to go home for Thanksgiving. So we provide a Thanksgiving buffet for them, and it is so much fun. It is so heartwarming to see how appreciative these people are and try to give them a little bit of home. I think one of the most impressive things that I can remember, Brittany, as far as trying to make the people who are deployed here feel at home, was at the Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort, where they were several years ago. They were on maneuvers. And some NATO forces, in this case CETO forces, came in. An Australian pilot was assigned to one of the Marine F-18 squadrons, and they were coming back from their mission. And this Australian pilot, we find out later, is thinking to himself, okay, all these guys are going to have this welcome home thing. All their family's going to be there. The flag waving. They're going to have gifts and presents, and the kids are going to be there. And we are not. And I'm from Australia, so I'm just going to have to enjoy this sort of vicariously. And when he landed, there was a group that was standing there that had gotten Australian flags. They had the band, part of the band there played the Australian national anthem. They're waving the flags for him. They were welcoming him back and everything. He said he'd never been so touched in his life. Couldn't believe that they would go to all that trouble to do that for him. And it's stories like that hardly get any publicity whatsoever. And those are stories that, just warm your heart, and to let people know how much they are appreciated. And that some people, police officers, they're going to be on duty on Christmas. Something happens on Christmas, you call the police,
Yep.
they're probably going to show up.
And there are a lot of domestic disputes on Christmas, surprisingly.
Well, there are, yeah, and somebody's going to be if there's an accident, kids get hurt with fireworks or something
Yep.
like that. Somebody's in the emergency room. We have a fantastic Trauma One center here at Memorial, and those people are going to be on duty. They're on duty right now. They're there 24/7. Costs a lot of money to run a trauma center, and sometimes because you've got orthopedic surgeons, plastic surgeons, nurses, anesthesiologists. All those people are on call just in case. Now, most of the time, they might just sit there and you say, okay, they got paid all this money for doing nothing. No, they earn their. Believe me, when some big accident comes in, they earn their money.
Well, not only that, Bill, it doesn't stop, right? Like,
No.
there's always stuff going on. There's always,
Exactly.
people having heart attacks and different things that are going on with people. Like, it doesn't stop just because it's Christmas or it's Thanksgiving. They still have to be there, and they still provide care, which I think is something that people don't understand, too. It's not all... They see all the glamour of being a physician or being a firefighter or being a police officer, but they don't see all of the other behind-the-scenes stuff that really is difficult and challenging. And they're away from their families a lot of times, so they are really being public servants. And, Bill, are you guys still looking for volunteers for your Thanksgiving buffet?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's a great idea to be able to volunteer.
Want to prepare a dish? By
Absolutely.
all means. I want to come out and help us out. But show up at the Navy League meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at Carrie Hilliard's Banquet Hall on Abercorn. And either become a member or just say, I'd just like to be visiting. I'd like to see what you do. You don't have to become a member, but if I can help out, but with a cash donation, so that we could go buy food and other and we also sometimes we do Christmas presents and all, especially for one of we have adopted the USS Alaska, one of the nuclear submarines down at Kings Bay, and we do all sorts of Christmas things for these guys down there because they're deployed 6 months out of the year. In case you don't know, submarines have 2 full crews, and that are on 6 months on, 6 months off.
Wow.
So
That's a big commitment.
Yeah. So these guys, they're out under the ocean someplace. We don't know where they don't know where they are for the most part, except the navigator and the captain.
Wow.
But they're out there on duty, they're on patrol, and they're under the ocean. And it might be Christmas Day. It ain't Christmas Day for them, it's Tuesday.
Yep.
They're on duty. And they are protecting us so that we can enjoy Christmas of this year and Christmases in the future, and that so that their families can enjoy it. So we try to do as much as we can for their families. And by the way, the other 6 months that they're here, they're still in simulators and everything else, so they're still training while they're off.
They have to, right? Because
Yeah, exactly.
going underwater is serious.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's a skill that has to be just like a surgeon. It's a skill that has to stay honed.
Yeah.
And so they still say, well, thank God for the simulators and everything else that we have now. So they actually, when you get one of those simulators, you think you're there. I've been in the ones for Gulfstream, and you think you're in a real airplane. There's no doubt once that thing gets started, there is no difference between that and the other than the fact that you're really on the ground and just in a little electronic mechanical device, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, so there's plenty of opportunities for you guys to get involved and do some service this holiday season as we're thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. There's a lot of ways to get involved. And if you have ways that people can get involved and do some service in the community, reach out to us, let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
And let us know what you're doing. As Mom used to say, if you don't toot your own horn, ain't nobody going to toot it for you.
Yes,
so
we would like
please,
to know.
it's not, it ain't bragging if you done it.
Yes.
So please let us know if you done it or going to do it.
Well, Bill, that's going to do it for us today.
Ooh, time
Yes,
flies
it
when you're
is.
having fun, doesn't it?
It
You look at the
sure
old
does.
clock on the wall.
I know.
Time to go, but we'll be back tomorrow for more fun and frolic, and we'll be a week and a couple of days away from Thanksgiving Day, and hear that big announcement from Donald Trump, and I hope he's going to say we're going out for Herschel Walker.
I hope so too, Bill. But in the meantime, catch us on YouTube, GRANewsMedia.com, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, sirree, and just a big shout out for a great performance from the Savannah Philharmonic this past weekend as well.